Good evening. How's everyone doing? I'm coming to you live from the East Coast, more specifically my living room in Washington, D.C. This is Pete Perry, and I hope to make this live stream sort of podcast more regularly. Um, so yeah, let's get started. So, lots going on in the world, obviously. Um, Hmm. So the war and genocide in Gaza continues. Just 4 days ago, there's a report that the sixth UN-run school had been bombed into basically obliteration. That was the sixth run U.S. Sixth UN-run school in Gaza bombed into obliteration in a matter of, I believe, 10 days. The IDF went on a real killing spree there, bombing the hell out of UN-run schools. And so that's where we begin tonight. A lot of folks in the U.S., including progressives, are obsessing about the monopoly that we have in the United States, the Democrats versus Republicans. Meanwhile, genocide is continuing, largely funded by our U.S. tax dollars because the U.S. continues to give Israel powerful weapons in which to engage in this genocide on the Palestinian people in Gaza. So there's a lot of folks in the U.S., including progressives, continue to quote this 40,000 number, 40,000 Palestinians killed since the October invasion following a Hamas terrorist attack inside Israel. So then the IDF invaded and decimated, which is 1 to 10, but now it's more like 1 to 100. Killed the number of Palestinians to Israelis killed in that terrible Hamas attack on October 7th, 2023. So within less than 2 weeks, basically, Israel invaded Gaza and has been there ever since and continues to bomb the hell out of Gaza. And like I said a few days ago, the sixth UN-run school was bombed into obliteration in a matter of about 10 days. That report came out about 3 days ago. But people are, like I said, quoting this 40,000 number. So Lancet, which is a very well-respected British medical journal, which covers conflicts throughout the world, estimates the number of Palestinians killed since the October IDF invasion is more like 186,000 rather than 40,000. So let's cut to that. Let's see. I'm trying to bring that up. Let's see. That's not coming up anymore. Well, let me read that report. Here we are. Nope. Let's read that report. From Lancet, the well-respected British medical journal that covers conflicts around the world. So this was, when was this report published? Oh, a whole month ago, July 12th, a little over a month ago. Gaza death figures. A study about Gaza published in early July in the British medical journal The Lancet shows an uncanny similarity to what the drafters of the Genocide Convention described. The authors Rasha Khatib, Martin McKee, Salim Yusuf, estimate around 186,000 deaths in Gaza attributable to the Israeli action since October 2023. And most of these were not caused by bombardment or execution. The Lancet authors derived a figure for total deaths by including a conservative estimate of 4 indirect deaths to 1 death caused by military action. They explained that armed conflict have indirect health implications beyond the direct harm from violence. Even if the conflict ends immediately, there will continue to be many direct and many indirect deaths in the coming months and years from causes such as reproductive, communicable, and non-communicable diseases. The total death toll is expected to be large given the intensity of this conflict. Destroyed healthcare infrastructure, so yeah, they bombed the hell out of hospitals. Severe shortages of food and water. Israel's not even allowing food and water in most cases to even enter Gaza. And lack of shelter and the population's inability to flee to safe places. And the loss of funding to UNRWA, one of the very few humanitarian organizations still active in the Gaza Strip. So yes, the U.S. cut off all funding to UNRWA because there are rumors that there was, 3 or 4 folks that were sympathetic to Hamas that were working in UNRWA out of a staff of about 12,000. So yeah, that was the only real humanitarian organization of any size that was operating within Gaza, and its funding has now been slashed entirely, largely by the U.S. government. And the authors of the Lancet report, they talk about indirect deaths, applying a conservative estimate of 4 indirect deaths for 1 direct death to the 37,396 deaths reported the direct deaths by bombing and so forth of the IDF. As can readily be seen, the methodology used in the Lancet study did not arrive at a precise figure for Gaza's deaths for at least 2 reasons. The first is the number of deaths reported by the Gaza Health Ministry, which by virtue of the difficulties on the ground may be undercounted. The other is the use of number 4 as the multiplier, which comes from a Geneva Declaration Secretariat determination 2008 about direct versus indirect deaths in armed conflict. So that's why they came up with a approximation of 186,000 deaths. So the vast majority, of course, are not Hamas leaders or fighters, but are civilians. And what has been widely reported is more than half of those deaths are people younger than 18. So they are minors, children, in other words, that are being slaughtered by the IDF due to that horrible Hamas terrorist attack on October 7th. But of course, the IDF response has been inhumane to say the least, and has now been considered genocide because they've killed maybe 100 times over the number of Israelis killed by Hamas on October 7th. And while this genocide continues, many people are focused on the general election in the U.S., the contest between the 2 corporate parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. So let me jump to that topic now. Let's see. Yeah, I can't do window capture. I was trying to do window capture. Okay, I had it running earlier. So let's see. So Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, was picked by Harris to be her running mate, and he is a popular guy. Mainstream, middle-of-the-road Democrats love him. Progressive Democrats love him. And I kind of like him. I mean, he's a very down-to-earth guy, very folksy, very easy to relate. He has a very easy time relating to the audiences they've had at their rallies. He's sort of the Midwestern dad that a lot of people love. And he's carried out a pretty progressive agenda overall as governor in Minnesota. In fact, he's policy-wise and the stances he's taken, he has become more progressive as governor as he was for like, how many terms was he in the, maybe 4 terms in the House of Representatives? I want to say, no, longer than that, about 5 terms. So I think it was about 10 years he was in the House of Representatives, so maybe 5 terms from the part of Minnesota, I believe southern Minnesota, sort of in and around Mankato area of Minnesota, which is a purple district, and I think it went for, I'm almost positive it went for Trump in 2016. I'm not sure how it went in 2020. So yeah, he's from sort of a purple, even sort of red-leaning district in many ways. So he was more moderate when he was representing that district than when he's than his 2 terms as governor now. He's in his 2nd term as governor of Minnesota. And so he's super popular, and I actually think he's helping Kamala Harris's candidacy. It's often that vice president really doesn't have any impact, but I think he is having an impact. And conversely, I think J.D. Vance, who Trump picked to be his running mate, is having a negative impact on Trump's campaign, which is also rather unusual. It's common that the VP pick doesn't have an impact one way or the other. So, yeah, that's very interesting. So yeah, right now, let me see. Let me run through the numbers. As of this evening, I saw that the polls show out of the 6, they often talk about the 6 battleground states, that out of 4 out of the 6, Harris now has a lead at or a little bit above the margin of error. Our margins of error on most of these polls are between 3.5% to 4.5%, plus or minus. So she's either on the upper edge of that margin of error, or she is solidly in the lead. Not by a lot, but she is in the lead in 4 of the 6 battleground states. So, and then I saw something, it was even tightening up even more, I think, later this evening when I just checked. So in Georgia, so I'm using 538. Some people have an issue with 538. I think they're okay. They're basically an aggregate site, so they are averaging from several different polls that come out every, week, every 4 or 5 days, or every week. These fairly well-respected polls come out, and so 538 takes an aggregate of them, averages them out. Well, it's an aggregate site, and it averages all these polls. And right now in Georgia, it shows, wow, in Georgia it actually shows Harris ahead, 46% to Trump's 45.7%. And that's with Kennedy in the race. Kennedy getting in Georgia right now 3.5%. So she's ahead by 0.3%. That is definitely within the margin of error. So but it's higher than I thought it was in Georgia. North Carolina has been kind of a surprise. Trump won that, I think, by 1%, maybe slightly less than 1%. He beat Biden there in 2020. And now it's, of this evening, the average from the polls in North Carolina show that Trump is ahead 45.4% to Harris's 44.9%, with Kennedy in it at 4.1% in North Carolina. So yeah, that is super close. Obviously, again, within the margin of error. And North Carolina is not even one of the 6 battleground states that I was talking about. The 6 battleground states are Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia. So North Carolina is sort of now becoming a battleground state because this is so extremely close. People might be talking about the seven battleground states now. Um, Next is Nevada. So Nevada is interesting. It's absolutely tied as of this evening. The average of all the polls coming out of Nevada shows Harris at 44.4% and Trump at 44.4%. So exactly tied. Total even deadlock in Nevada. With Kennedy in it at 5% in Nevada. So let me see. I was going to look up, and then she's further ahead in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. I think she's actually well ahead in Michigan now, which is really the story has changed dramatically since Biden dropped out. Biden was trailing Trump by rather large numbers. So what does it say? Michigan. Yes, Michigan. She is ahead. Harris is ahead 46.1% to Trump's 43.1% as of this evening, average polls coming out of Michigan. So that's 3%. That is right on the upper edge, almost out of the margin of error at that point at 3%. And Kennedy is in this at 5.5% in Michigan. Um, Wisconsin also, I think she has a pretty good lead. Harris is certain leading there. Certain, yes, yeah, she's just beyond the margin of error. So that is a solid lead in Wisconsin right now, with Harris at 47.4% and Trump at 43.7% in Michigan. And as of this evening, Kennedy is in it too from this average at 4.2% in Wisconsin. So yeah, that is interesting. Let me next look at Arizona. I think I saw as of this evening she's slightly ahead, but it's within the margin of error. Let's see. Arizona. So the average of all the polls coming out of Arizona, according to 538, yes, has Harris at 45.2% and Trump at 44.1%, a 1.1% lead for Harris. But again, that is well within the margin of error. This does have Kennedy at 5.2% in Arizona. So yes, of course, Trump needs to be defeated, but we can never forget that we're in a duopoly, so people are not really given much of a choice. On the states that do have the Greens as an option, and it's a deep blue state like New York, Massachusetts, here in Washington, D.C., not a state, it should be a state, and California, beyond those four places, probably vote for Harris. But if you think of yourself as a progressive and you're in one of those deep blue states, I would suggest going for Jill Stein. And I'm going to be going for Jill Stein again for a third time because all three times I've been here in Washington, D.C., which the Democrats always win by 88 to 92% of the vote. So, yeah. Harris doesn't really need my vote here in D.C., and I am progressive, and Jill Stein I agree with on pretty much all the major issues. And she will demand a complete permanent ceasefire in Gaza, and if Israel doesn't agree to it, she would cut off all the military aid to Israel. And that can be done. The U.S. can do that in a blink of the eye, but they won't. The two corporate parties will not do that. All their candidates get really good cash from AIPAC, the American Israeli Political Action Committee. So, let me see. What else I was going to talk? Oh, my recent trip to Montreal with my boyfriend 2 weeks ago. It was fantastic. Visited my younger, more polite cousins in Canada. Canadians are just more polite in general. Montreal's a fun city. I really like it there. I think it's a fantastic place. A lot of great restaurants, a lot of nice walking opportunities. One One morning we walked all the way up Mount Royal, which is sort of like a mountain. It's a small mountain, but it's a mountain inside the city of Montreal, sort of in the middle of the city. It's really like a large hill. We walked up it, and there's an Olmsted Park. Olmsted, of course, being the designer of Central Park and New York City, also Stanley Park in Vancouver, British Columbia. If you're ever in Vancouver, British Columbia, go to Stanley Park. It's fantastic. And the Olmsted Park at the sort of the summit, the top of Mount Royal. We walked up there. It was fantastic. We just had a really good time. We were there for 6 days, 6 nights in Montreal, Canada. And of course, great to meet up with my cousins. My cousin Catherine is now engaged, and my cousin Chris actually has a girlfriend. He was single for a long time, but he has a girlfriend now. Um, and that's life in Canada. It's good. Like people seem happier there than people in the U.S. Maybe it's something about having the universal healthcare system covering people. I mean, I have heard there are some problems, a lot of complaints that Canadians have of their healthcare system, but everybody is universally covered. So that is a safety net that we don't currently have in the US. Um, you know, every year, hundreds of thousands of people are bankrupt when something goes wrong with their health and they need to go to a hospital or need emergency operation. They become financially crippled completely because we don't have that universal health care. We have very much a for-profit system with these large insurance companies. And my voice, lastly, my voice. I purchased this new microphone here, and I'm going to be taking voice lessons from a professional actor who's been in a couple uh, Emmy award-winning shows as a recurring role, and had a small bit role in my favorite TV show of all time, The Wire. If you have not seen The Wire, it entirely takes place in Baltimore, Maryland, and it's fantastic. The writing, directing, acting is stellar. It is perhaps my favorite um, TV show of all time. So yes, I want to get into voiceover work, advertisements, animation, video games, all those things. I'm open to a lot of opportunities. I want to use my voice and train it to become even stronger and a, perhaps a greater range if I can attain that. That would be fantastic. So yes, that's why I bought this nice new professional microphone here. Let's see, you see it there. I'm not going to pick it up right now, but yes, that's all for tonight. And yes, if I missed anything, maybe I'll catch up on that in my next podcast. Thank you. Have a nice night.